What is well-being? According to Canadians, it is defined as the presence of the highest possible quality of life through a wide range of domains.
I was really heartened actually to read what I did about Manitoba and how we're doing in terms of work-life balance, how we use our time. And so I think the first reaction I had was that I think we are really true to our license plates, that Manitoba and Winnipeg is really like a small community in some ways. So it's not hard to meet someone, even a stranger, and realize that you are somehow connected. You know, somebody's friend, relative, cousin, you worked with someone, and that's wonderful. And I think that was reflected in the report's findings that we spend upwards of 80 minutes a day actually connecting with our friends, which is actually fantastic and squeaks by the national average. So we really have a lot to say here in Manitoba. So I think that was great. And I think the other thing that really stood out for me was just how well Manitobans integrate work and life. So that was fantastic. And I think you know this if you've lived somewhere else and then you move to Manitoba. A lot of people talk about how they feel less time pressure at work, how they don't have to work those really exhausting long hours, and how there's a little bit of flexibility or play in the hours that they do work. And so I think that, we do better than most provinces in Canada on those dimensions. We should be proud of that. I think we don't often really think about it or acknowledge it, but it's important and it makes for a less stressful life. And of course, that bodes well for your health. Although this may be a fantastic place to live, it might not be a fantastic place to sleep. So that's one of the things I got from the report. So, Manitobans, about 45 to 55% of them are having regular problems with falling asleep and staying asleep. And concerning was that has actually worsened in the last 10 years relative to other places in Canada. So that certainly rings true with what we see as health providers. We are seeing more and more people with chronic medical conditions, particularly in the last 5 or 10 years. So, a lot of people with diabetes, hypertension, asthma, allergies, chronic pain conditions. And of course, all of those problems can worsen a person's sleep and their sleep quality. So that's been very evident. I think the other thing that's also been evident is people are increasingly relying on substances to help them with sleep, and particularly since the pandemic. And so when the pandemic started here, a lot of folks were working out of their home if they could, and often that meant staying up later than they did or were used to doing on their devices, and not getting up early in the morning to commute in. So not getting that exposure to the bright light that often is so helpful for entraining our rhythm. And so they weren't sleeping as well. And so we had about 3 times the volume of referrals for people with sleep problems during the pandemic. And the other thing that I think started to happen is because people were at home more, they had more access to substances. So alcohol, nicotine, cannabis, caffeine, and all of those things were sort of a perfect storm for developing more sleep problems. And I think, unfortunately, once you get into those habits of using substances like alcohol or cannabis to help you with sleep, it's very hard to change that pattern. And so I think now what we have seen is that's just added to the complexity of the health burden for Manitobans, and something that does need to be addressed. So I think the most hopeful message is there's lots that can be done to improve your sleep. So it may feel like a hopeless situation because you've had the problem for a long time, but really there are very good tools, particularly cognitive, behavioral, psychological strategies that can really help improve the quality of your sleep, how long it takes you to fall asleep, and how long you're awake in the middle of the night. And so there's lots that can be done. And I would really suggest that people invest in improving their sleep rather than resulting to taking a substance to help them with sleep. Because sleep is just so important. And again, we don't often think about the long-term effects of not sleeping well. We're quite aware often of the short-term effects where we wake up feeling exhausted. We might get into work, or we might cancel with work. If we do go to work, we might find that we can't pay attention very well, we can't concentrate. And in fact, data shows we actually don't get promoted as often if we're sleep deprived. And then emotionally, we're more irritable, we're more snappy with our friends, friends, colleagues, and then of course tend to not cope very well with stress. So we can become a little bit emotional, upset more so than usual when we were not sleeping well. So it's really a good investment to work on improving your sleep, and it can be improved. And so I think that's the most hopeful message I have, is just to be mindful of it, pay attention to it. And if it's not going in the direction you'd like, take some action and effort to work on it, because you can sleep better. There's two main processes that dictate whether we sleep well. So one is having enough drive to sleep. So that means waiting until you're good and sleepy until you get into the bedroom. And so for some of us, we're not exactly sure of how to know when we're sleepy. So the two indicators usually are, your chin falling to your chest or your eyes getting a bit blurry. And when you notice those feelings, don't ignore them. Don't stay on your device. Don't keep watching the TV program till it ends, but just go to bed because you're sleepy. And that's the perfect situation to get into your bed. And similarly, when you get up in the morning, try to get up at the regular time, a similar time every day, Monday to Sunday. And it's really helpful if you can get moving and get yourself into bright light. And that is easy in Manitoba because although our winters are freezing cold, we have so much beautiful bright sunlight. So it's very helpful for your circadian rhythm to get that nice bright light in the morning, and similarly to go to bed in the dark when you're sleepy. And so I think those would be some of the most helpful things a person can do to help themselves with their sleep. The population average is sort of between 7 and 8 hours a night, and yet many of us, can feel quite refreshed on 6.5, or we need to have 9.5. So there's large individual differences in how much sleep we need. And so I think the first thing is there's no one number of hours or duration of sleep that's helpful or necessary. You got to figure out how much sleep you need as an individual. Now that's tough to do. So one of the ways we sometimes suggest people do that is to monitor your sleep for a while and monitor how you feel in the daytime. And ask yourself, were there days when I felt really good in the daytime, but I slept kind of less than my ideal amount? Or was there the opposite? Were there days when I was sleeping my ideal amount, but I didn't feel so well during the daytime? And if you do that for a couple of weeks, you'll get a sense of how much sleep you need to feel good in the daytime. So that's one way to do it. The other way to do it is to start to limit yourself to time in bed based on how much time you're actually sleeping. And do that for a few days, and then start slowly giving yourself a bit more time in bed, and see at what point your sleep starts to get a lot worse. And when that starts to happen, that's a good indicator of your ideal sort of bedtime and wake up time. And that can be very helpful to know. And it's been a bit hard to determine what's a good quality sleep. People's reports on whether they sleep well often have to do with how happy they are with their lives generally, sort of how happy they are with their relationships, how connected they feel to people. If you look at their sleep information from an overnight sleep study, you might see that they have some time in REM, some time in deep sleep, some time in light sleep. That would be an indicator of a normal sleep profile, and a profile that would be positive. But in the absence of that, we're often going with just how much energy we have in the daytime and how we feel upon awakening. So that takes a little bit of monitoring to get a real sense of that. A trend that's happened over time is people are now using their bedrooms for lots of things, like a place to go to unwind, maybe a place to watch their Netflix. Maybe they've got their alarm clock that, gets projected onto the ceiling. They've got beautiful bedding. It's really an unwind, relax kind of place. And that is really a departure from how bedrooms used to be and probably need to be. So I sometimes think of it this way. You should think of yourself a bit of like a black bear would. You should walk into your bedroom door. It should be dark. It should be cold. There should be nothing to do there. And you say to yourself, well, I might as well sleep. So that is a great attitude to have when you walk into your bedroom, not to have it be something else that a place to go to do other things. And some of the other things that we do in bed can involve looking at her device, but also reading, talking to her spouse, paying bills, sometimes even working. All of those things are good things to do, but they should happen elsewhere and not in the bedroom if you can manage it. And similarly, that bedroom, the importance of it being really dark all night can't be understated. Like for many of us, we fall asleep when it's dark outside, so we think that we're sleeping in a nice, light controlled environment. But really, as soon as the sun starts to come up in the morning, it's probably coming into our bedroom in some way. And so doing what you can to be very mindful about blocking that out really will help a lot. And similarly, although we might be a little cold at night because maybe we're a bit stressed from the day, it's really helpful to sleep in a room that's no more than 18 degrees Celsius. So having a very cozy room when you go to bed is probably not going to help you with sleep. It may bring you up into a later stage of sleep, which probably won't be helpful. There is a value to that. Blue light blocking is what you're doing there, and there is a value to that, and it is helpful. It's also helpful, though, just to think about a bedtime for the device, and think about that bedtime for the device being maybe an hour earlier than your bedtime. So that's a real habit shift for lots of us because, we get home from a long work day, we want to unwind, we use our devices for entertainment, sometimes connecting with others, sometimes planning things. If we're teens, we're using the device to socialize. So those are all good things, but it's just really important to get them done earlier and not to lead them right up to your bedtime. Because both being on a device distracts us from knowing when we're sleepy. We can get stimulated by it, even if we're blocking the blue light, and those things just tend to not be very helpful. There's certainly an impact of eating a heavy meal or too salty meal or too sweet a meal right before bedtime. So many people find that they might fall asleep okay, but as their body digests the food, they're going to come into a lighter stage of sleep and have less deep quality sleep. So you do want to try to be thinking about having your evening meal several hours before you go to bed if you can. And to be mindful of what you're eating and making sure that it's not something that's going to be hard to digest or it's going to be too salty and make you wake up feeling thirsty and those kinds of things. So those are really helpful things to keep in mind and try to structure your life a little bit so you're not eating food right up into bedtime. There's a variety of sleep aids that people use, one of which is melatonin hormone. Others are actual frank sleeping pills. And melatonin has not been shown to be particularly helpful for sleep, so we don't tend to recommend that. The other thing with melatonin supplements is if you take them, you have to be very mindful of not going on any device or getting exposure to any kind of light because that will just override the effect of melatonin. And most of us can't control our environment to that degree all of the time, and so it's often not a great choice, and it's better to do some of these behavioral things. A lot of people are coming into our offices wearing sleep monitoring devices, Apple Watch or the Fitbit or the Ring, as you mentioned, and how we look at that is those are useful because they remind us of the importance of sleep, and maybe you should go to bed now. Maybe you have something on your alarm that tells you that, or you should get up at a certain time. So that's a positive. But the negative is those devices were normed on healthy sleepers. So they're not very good at detecting time awake at night. And so they'll give you the impression you've got an enormous problem. And so it's not very helpful or reliable. So it can make us more anxious or more apprehensive. And I think the other thing about those things is, as a culture, we're really excited about monitoring, and it's something we like to do because I think we like to feel in control of our lives, and our night and our sleep is no different. Of course, the problem with that is we can get kind of attached to that idea, and it becomes actually a thing that maintains anxiety and maintains an emphasis on a problem. We call that safety behaviors in psychology, and we try to phase those out. So try putting that watch aside for a while. It might not be as important to know exactly what's happening at night, and nor may it be that reliable an indicator of that too. I think what I would like to share is that I think a person should take their health seriously, and that includes their sleep health. And that, we put a lot of effort into doing things like, planning social activities or maybe even purchasing a car, but we spend, relatively very little time trying to maximize our sleep health. And, sleep is kind of at the core for a lot of things in life. If you're not sleeping well, and you know this, if you don't sleep well, you just don't have energy to give to your life what it demands, and it's hard to experience pleasure, and you're more likely to be kind of anxious or down. And so it's really worth it to think about what can I do today to make myself sleep better and help myself with that. And there's lots you can do.